Well, good morning. It's Travels with Dottie here, and it is the 5th day of September 2024, and it's 10:47 a.m. and I'm in Eagle Nest, New Mexico, 30 miles south of the Colorado border at 8,000 feet. And today's video is for those of you that are considering, is the nomad life for me? Meaning, should I give up my permanent unmovable place to live and live in a car, an RV, a trailer, whatever, and be mobile, be a nomad, travel? Maybe you've been watching quite a few YouTube videos, including some of mine, and thinking, is this for me? In particular, is it a way for me to have a inexpensive retirement? All the questions come down to this: is this lifestyle gonna be for me? So what I've come up with here are 10 things that you need to be willing to at least tolerate to flourish in this lifestyle. And the first one is maybe the most obvious one, maybe not, is you need to be comfortable living in a very small space. Now, spaces vary. You could be embarking in a 45-foot Class A, RV, which is like a huge bus, those huge bus-looking RVs, and that's a lot of room. But it's still usually substantially less than even a typical one-bedroom apartment. It still is restricted space, but it's a lot. Or you could be considering a car, you could be considering a van, a camper van, or a regular van, or you could be considering a travel trailer. Travel trailers can vary in length from just 10 or 12 feet. All the one I have a YouTube short on one I saw in Pahrump that was they call a fifth wheel. It's just a different way of connecting to the truck that pulls it. It was 53 feet, and I believe you can't legally have anything longer than 53 feet because I think, from what I'm told, that's the maximum length of a 18-wheeler truck that you see, commercial truck. So it's 53 feet. That's a big one. A big family was living in that. So anyway, I can talk to you about my experience in a travel trailer. I live in a Winnebago Micro Mini 21-foot travel trailer. It's a 2021, model is 2100 BH. It's 21 feet long, has a little slide in it. It's pretty small. My first trailer before I went full-time was a 27-foot trailer, a Leighton Nomad. They no longer make them. But this is what I did before I pulled the trigger. I was working and living in Northern Virginia in Fairfax County, right outside Washington, D.C. And I was living in what you would easily describe as a very high-end luxury apartment in an area called Tyson's Corner in a high-rise. It was pretty expensive. It's probably way more expensive now. But I moved out of there, and I took my 27-foot trailer out of storage, and I found a place with full hookups in Fairfax County, which, by the way, is a whole nother story. That was not easy to find because there are not really RV parks anywhere in Fairfax County. But I found a place, and I decided I'm going to live full-time and work at my, prior to retirement. And I'm going to see how I feel about the space and living there. Can I do it indefinitely? And I didn't know, really. I'd been on trips on it, but taking a trip in an RV is different from knowing that this is it for me. There's no other more spacious place for me to go. This is where I live. So I did that, and I did that for 3 years. And here's what I found for me is I was more comfortable in a small space. I loved living in the trailer. I fell in love with it immediately. So much so that I decided I could go even smaller. I didn't know if I could go all the way to camper van, but I knew I could go. I needed to get rid of that 27 footer because I had, this is a whole nother long story. I had water damage. It was ruined. It was trashed. I trashed my RV, my trailer, and I had to get rid of it. And I bought a new one, and I decided I could get the 21 footer. So that was 6 feet less in length, and I think it was about a foot narrower. It was quite a big difference. And I bought that and moved into it, I think, in August or September of 2021. And I lived in it from August or September until December 1st when I retired and took off. So it was 3 months before I pulled the trigger. But as I suspected, I was totally fine with the space. I loved it, and I continued. That was December 1st, 2021 is when I no longer was anchored, and I was retired, and I was on the road. So so this December coming up, it'll be 3 years living in this travel trailer. So space, number one, space was not a problem for me. So number two, this is, this is in no particular order, because might seem a little bit odd transition to number two, but number two, I'm calling unfamiliar shopping. Now, my whole life, I took comfort when I would move to a new neighborhood and I would pick a grocery store and I would acclimate myself to that grocery store. And after a while, I knew where everything was. And there were no frustrations with not being able to find stuff after a while. I knew where everything was and I could go right to it. And shopping was easy peasy. And I can remember sometimes when my grocery store would renovate or change stuff and change locations, I would get really annoyed. It's like, why are you making changes? It's frustrating. Well, when you go on the road, that is going to be your experience over and over again, because you no longer have the familiar grocery store. Every grocery store that you go to do your shopping is going to have a different layout. Every Walmart you go to is going to be different. And that being familiar and knowing where everything is going to have to just be a thing in the past. And surprisingly, I adjusted to that really quickly. I was totally fine with it. And it has to do with this old saying I've mentioned before: expectations are resentments under construction. With every resentment, at the root of it is an unfulfilled expectation. And if I have unreasonable, illogical expectations, then I'm going to have pretty unnecessary, silly resentments. So as soon as the expectation of knowing where things were removed, there was no resentment. I never have an expectation going to a new place that I'm going to be able to navigate the grocery store and know where everything is. It's going to be a new experience every time. And the sort of routine in movement that I have adopted, there are places that I go back to that I'm there over and over again from year to year. So some of that familiarity with the grocery stores starts building back up again. But I do find, like, when I go back to Pahrump and I go into Smith's, I do forget where stuff is. Occasionally I stand, where was that? So it's not like full-time being around, but that gets a little bit better. So unfamiliar shopping is, you got to be comfortable with that. You got to adjust your expectations. Number three is there's lots of alone time. And this is not an absolute requirement, because you can engineer things where you're not alone. But for the most part, unless you're traveling with someone, and that does happen, both couples that are connected romantically and people that are not connected romantically but connected by friendship and they travel together, that happens frequently. But if you're going to be traveling on your own, as I do, you're going to have a lot. I'm okay with being alone quite a bit. And I know how to, when I'm feeling like I've been alone too much lately, I know how to resolve that. I know where to go to connect with people. And when, for example, there's no loneliness at all when I'm in Quartzsite. And I'm in Quartzsite, Arizona. If you don't know about that, there's tons of videos of mine you can watch about that. But it's kind of a mecca in the winter for nomads and RVers. It's in southwestern Arizona in the desert, lots of public land to camp on, and very community oriented. So I camp there from the middle of November until March. And I camp with other people, so I'm around other people, and there's like a little neighborhood that gets created in community. So alone time doesn't really happen really at all for me in the winter. It's kind of in Pahrump. I'm there in the shoulder seasons, and then now it's been New Mexico in the summer, and that's changing a little bit because it used to be in New Mexico. I would do New Mexico state parks, having to move every 2 weeks. So building a community over the whole summer is almost impossible doing that. But now I'm staying in the same place in Eagle Nest, New Mexico. I've been here for 2 months, and I'm coming back for I'll be here from June 1st till September 30th in the same spot in Eagle Nest. So it's going to be a lot easier to be part of that community. And but still, I have I may seem like an extrovert. If you think of an extrovert as a person that maybe talks a lot, is personable, seems comfortable at parties and interacting with strangers, that's not really what the definition is, right? There's extroverts gain their energy from interactions with other people, and when their energy is depleted, they seek out these situations with a lot of people and interactions. And introverts are the opposite. They gain energy from being isolated and alone in that sort of peacefulness, and that's where I recharge my batteries. When my batteries are charged, when I'm well rested and I feel good, that's when I feel the desire to go out and be around people, and I have the energy to do that. So I recharge my batteries kind of being alone, and it gets depleted by interacting with people. So it has to do with energy levels and where you get your energy and where your sort of internal energy is expended. That is really introvert, extrovert, and I'm definitely on the introvert side. So I had a point there somewhere, didn't I? I lost it. I'm a little distracted because I'm on a windy road with no shoulders, and there's a guy behind me pressing me with speed. And I want to be able to pull over and let him by, and I want a safe place to do that. That's makes me uncomfortable when I'm doing well, and actually I'm doing 5 miles over the speed limit. This person is still pressing to that sort of too close to me. And so I see a spot I can pull over, I can let them go by, and I can relax a little bit. It's really kind of an unsafe thing to do, to be speeding behind someone and push them to drive faster than the speed limit, or it's just not a great thing to do. So the alone time. Number 4 is maintenance and repair. Now, you have maintenance and repair of stuff, whether you're in an apartment or a house. And granted, in many apartments, it's a phone call to get stuff fixed. But let's face it, there's a lot of stuff you just fix yourself. There are a lot of things that happen that like to your own stuff maybe that, you know, the apartment's not going to take care of. And certainly if you own your own house, you're doing a lot of your own maintenance if you can. If not, you're going to hire someone. Well, it's different on the road in a couple of ways. One is your house is bumping down the road like it's in an earthquake when you're traveling. So therefore, stuff is going to break more for that reason. And the second reason is if you're in an RV, a regular RV, they're engineered and designed for recreational use, which recreational use does not mean you live in it full time. It means you live in it a few times a year, not full time. It's not designed for it. So you have something that's not designed for that kind of durability. You know, if you're traveling full time and you use it for a solid year or two, you are probably using up the life of that RV in 2 years that's meant to be 10 or 20. So keep that in mind. So repairs are going to be more frequent. And if you do not have the ability, the propensity, or the desire to do your own repairs, you have to pay someone else to do it, unless you're lucky enough to have a friend that'll do it for free that knows what they're doing. You got to be careful with that, though. There's systems like electrical systems that need to be done by somebody that knows what they're doing. It can be dangerous. So you're out traveling around like I do. There's not like a friendly mechanic or RV repair center that is going to be near a house that you're familiar with because you're moving. There are mobile RV repair guys almost everywhere, and you have to do your research, and it's always sort of a dice roll to decide whether or not this person is going to be competent or not, and it can be expensive. So the best is if you have your own tools and you can do your own repairs. I enjoy it. I am not an expert. I would see moderate, medium skills, and I like doing my own repairs. Now, don't be too deceived by this. There are times where I like delay doing the repair, and I just don't get not motivated to get out and do it. But I find once I do it and complete it and it's correct, it feels really good. It feels like I've really produced something. But it's pretty constant. There's always something that needs some sort of modification or repair, and I'm totally okay with that. And so that's another thing need to be okay with. Number 5, sudden plan changes due to weather or other conditions, like finding out you have an annoying neighbor. Now, there's extremes to this, of course. I'll use an example. You're in your RV and you're traveling around Florida, you're near the coast, and a hurricane is coming. You got to get the hell out. You got to get out more than people in fixed homes there that may be okay, but you're not going to be okay. You need to get out. You're someplace in the fall and a snowstorm is coming and you need to go south, and you need to do it before the storm gets there. So plans can change really quickly because of weather, and you need to be prepared for that and be okay with doing that.
Say a command.
I don't know why my Garmin keeps... I'm going to try to shut it off. There. It keeps thinking I'm talking to it. I don't know what word I'm using that's waking it up, but it's off now. So, neighbors. You can have the perfect spot in the state park for the perfect rate for 2 full weeks, and it's a beautiful spot, but you have a neighbor that has a constantly barking dog, or a constantly running loud construction style generator, or they play music late at night and they party and you can't sleep. All right? There's certain things like the partying all night, noise late at night, you can like go to the camp host and they may or may not be able to really do anything about that. I'm talking about there's nothing you can really do. Like if somebody runs, in most campgrounds, you can run your generators from like 6 or 7 in the morning to 10 at night, and there's no distinction made about how loud a generator you're running. Anyway, you can get into situations where you need to leave because you don't like your neighbor. It's messing you up, and it will. You may lose money canceling the reservation and getting another one, but because in Nomad it's dynamic, you could be out on BLM land and be nice and peaceful out in the middle of nowhere, and someone could set up camp 20 feet from you. They're allowed to do it. It's public land. It's not your land, right? And you were out there to be isolated, and you're uncomfortable with someone being that close. So you can't force them to move. You need to move. So I have not needed to move for any of those reasons in almost 3 years. That doesn't mean it won't happen soon. It can happen at any time. And I'm okay with it. I'm prepared for it. It's fine. I'll take care of it. So, and number 6 is you could find yourself in, depending on the choices that you make, you may have to move frequently. For example, I love New Mexico, and I got into the New Mexico State Park system. I had an annual pass, and like last summer, I was in that system the whole summer, but there was a rule. You couldn't stay more than 2 weeks in one park, and you had to be out for, I think it was 6 nights, and then you could come back, but you had to move every 2 weeks. And one of the things that you need to know is, especially if you have a setup like mine with a trailer and you set things up outside like chairs and hummingbird feeders and Dottie's bed and the antenna Starlink and all the things that I set up when I set up camp, it takes time and effort and energy to set it up, and it also takes time and effort and energy to break it down and pack it up and get ready to go, and it can be exhausting. And the day you need to leave, it doesn't matter whether it's 110 degrees or 30 degrees or raining or snowing. I've not had snow, but I've had it raining on move day. It can be exhausting. Now, I've eliminated that starting next summer because the spot I have in New Mexico is going to be one spot. It's going to be all summer, so I'm not going to be in the park system again. But if you want to do this lifestyle and you like the idea of changing locations frequently, just know that it takes energy and it can be tough to do physically. And the older you are, trust me, the harder it is. The bigger the rig that you have, I think, the harder it may be. It's all dependent, but it's something to consider. And 7, healthcare. When I started, I left my job, so my health insurance was gone. I wasn't 65 yet. I was 61, about to turn 62. So I had to go with where I established residency in Nevada. I went for the Affordable Health Care Act, and I got inexpensive insurance. Well, inexpensive insurance means I had a huge deductible, like $7,000 or $8,000, that I really didn't stand a chance unless I had something major happen. Everything was going to be out of pocket, and everything has been out of pocket ever since I retired. That's going to end very soon. February 1st, I'll have Medicare. But health insurance and then access to health care, that you're moving around, you don't have a right. I do have high blood pressure, and I need a diuretic medication, a prescription medication. So I have a online service that I can access a doctor online and get my prescriptions refilled in all the states. That it covers all the states that I'm in, and luckily, and this isn't required, but I do have the same doctor on this service in every state because he's licensed in all those states. I just got lucky like that, so I can get my prescriptions done. But I had a nosebleed that I couldn't stop in the middle of the night once. I was in New Mexico. It was last summer, and I was a paramedic, so I knew about nosebleeds that are hard to stop. But I got, so 2 hours later, it was still gushing out, and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't rig a way to pinch my nose, so I went to the ER. That ER visit ended up costing me about $1,500, and all they did was gave me some Afrin nasal spray, which constricts the blood vessels and helps it stop. And unfortunately, I didn't have any Afrin, and there was nothing open within an hour that I could have bought Afrin in. So I bought a $1,500 bottle of Afrin nasal spray, essentially. So healthcare really can be a problem getting access to it because you're moving around so much. In getting prescriptions filled, you can imagine how tough that is. The number 8 is domicile uncertainty. What do I mean by domicile? Well, if you give up your stationary home and you're on the road, you have to have a place that's going to be your legal residence. You're going to have a legal address in order to maintain banking accounts, in order to have auto insurance, and in order to have a valid driver's license and vehicle registration. And the laws by state vary quite a bit. And you can run into problems pretty easily. I domiciled in Pahrump, Nevada, and the law in Pahrump is you can move there and prove that you've lived where you're living in Pahrump or Nevada for 30 days. And RV parks count. People are allowed to live in RV parks full time. But all you have to do is show that you're there for 30 days and you can get your car registered and get a driver's license. You certainly can tell your insurance company, this is where I live now. The problem is, if you don't stay in that RV park and you do what I did, and the DMV required, I have to have your physical address, that's what goes on your driver's license, but you can have a mailing address that is different, and I have a mail service that I use in Pahrump. So that's my mailing address. So what I ended up doing is I did find an RV park, a different RV park that was it's called Preferred RV Resort, and it's a member-owned RV park. So if you become a member and pay to become a member, you become a fractional owner of not just the business of the RV park, but the real estate. And it's a small fractional amount for one membership. It's like 1 over 2,000 something fractional membership. But it's legal because it's registered through the county, and you get a deed that shows that fractional membership. So you are the owner of part of that real estate, and that is my legal address, and that's defensible as a domicile should it be questioned. Hey, you're not at that RV park anymore, and I am probably at least 6 months out of the year. I am there at that RV park with my vehicle and everything. So I'm covered. I'm covered for my bank account, for my insurance, everything, because I have the deed. I'm there at least 6 months out of the year, and it's, you can live in a house and you can travel half the year, and that doesn't ruin your domicile. So I'm okay. But I have friends, at least one friend, that did it that way, but didn't get it like a permanent place like me, and they came after them taking away driver's license, registration, bank account. They're horror stories out there. So you need to be very careful about where you establish your residency, what the rules and the laws are, and make sure that you're going to be okay there, because it can be pretty risky. Number 9, diversity. I say diversity in ideas, beliefs, religions, and politics. If you really want to be wired into the nomad community and have a lot of relationships and friends and people that you can count on and be a lot, you're going to find that people have there's a lot of diversity in values and religion and politics, especially these days. You have to find a way to, you don't have to. It's best to find a way to be able to tolerate other views that you feel very differently about. Politics is the good example now. You got the far right, the far left, the red, blue, and red, and tempers flare and stuff. But one of the things that we do in like Quartzsite, we have people in those opposite things. We have kind of a rule. When we're all together in a group, like at a potluck or around the campfire, no politics. We just all agree voluntarily not to discuss politics, and that works out really well. And so you can choose just to associate with people that have your same values and beliefs, but your circle's going to be much smaller, and I don't recommend that unless you feel so strongly you need to do that, because the more people that are in your circle, the more support you have. I think in general, at least for me, I found there's more joy. And number 10 is probably the one I know the least about, but I do know enough to know there are potential issues with that. That is relationships on the road. You can imagine how difficult a romantic partnership marriage would be when you live like in a camper van full time. You're just like there in each other's space all the time. You really need to figure that out before you retire and sell your house and the two of you go into a van. People do it. Lots of YouTube channels out there, couples that live in vans and RVs and trailers and stuff, and they do just fine. I know many of them. Some couples travel in separate rigs, but they go everywhere together. And dating, I don't have experience doing that on the road really at all, but I know people that do it. They'll meet somebody on the road, they'll be someplace for 6 months, and they'll have a relationship that lasts for 6 months, and then they might go their separate ways and then reconnect later, or they could agree to start traveling together, which, that's a whole nother layer of complexity. That relationships are very, very different on the road, and they can be, because of the nature of nomad life, they can get very, very intense very quickly and end and explode just as quickly. And it is not a thing that I have direct experience with, but I'm a professional therapist, and I've done, I don't do it anymore, but I used to do a lot of marriage counseling, I think pretty successfully. So I have an idea of how difficult relationships are under the best of conditions. So anyway, those are your 10 things that I think that you need to think about before you pull the trigger on this lifestyle. And I hope you appreciate this video. I'm really grateful that you watched it, especially if you watched it going this far. And I also appreciate you tolerating me multitasking. I'm getting 2 things done at once. I'm doing a video and I'm taking a drive. Dottie's with me, and she's sound asleep in her little bed next to me. But anyway, I will see you on the next video. Take care.